In 2024, a YouTube short about a unique animated feature film produced by the Canadian studio Nelvana was released. For the first 3 months, this short slowly accumulated just over 6,500 views. And then, this happened.
You never know how much love is inside of you until the day you launch.
And ever since, we at Horror Metal Sounds have been trying to figure out what happened that made this little video so popular. We've covered so many other nostalgic films, television shows, bands, and albums, but with Rock and Rule, what accidental bit of marketing brilliance triggered an immediate click, like, and share response in so many viewers? But more importantly, why did a weird little Canadian animated film that went virtually unseen back in 1983 get such a huge surge of interest over 40 years after it debuted? Truth be told, Rock and Rule may have been a financial flop in its theatrical release, but subsequent TV screenings and VHS recordings kept this flawed masterpiece in the back of young viewers' minds for years after its release. When the film started to circle back around into relevance as an item of pop culture memorabilia, as all things eventually do, the response was far more enthusiastic than its initial impact. There have been several interpretations as to what other films or television shows might have influenced Rock and Rule. The Devil and Daniel Mouse was a previous Nelvana co-production, and it has often been attributed to being a direct influence on Rock and Rule. And while it might have had some bearing on the general plot of the film, Rock and Rule mutated out of an animated feature called Drats that was being developed for a young audience. The main cast of characters in Drats were Omar, Dizzy, and Omar's sister Chucky. Drats was still set in a post-apocalyptic world, in a town called Frugal Town, and yes, the characters were still anthropomorphic rodent and or dog-like creatures, hence the working title, Drats. The roller skating characters of Cindy and her bumbling brothers were also present in Drats, although there were originally 4 brothers instead of 3. And yes, Mock was still the villain of the story. Part of the Drats storyline was that Mock would hypnotize all the citizens of Frugal Town and lure them away like the Pied Piper, presumably through the sinister power of his music. At a presentation that Rock and Roll director Clive Smith gave in Toronto in November of 2025, he said that the original inspiration for Mock was actually the famous rock band Kiss, but later he modeled that character off of David Bowie instead. Angel was always one of the characters from early on, however she was turned into a guitar by Mock, for reasons that were not quite fleshed out at the time. I find that the most interesting alteration from Drats to Rock and Rule was the omission of the character of Chucky, Omar's plucky sister. I have a theory that Omar's character was a much more laid-back individual in Drats, and that Chucky embodied more of Omar 2.0's rebelliousness in this early draft of the final story. As the plot became geared towards an older audience, and the struggling rock band scenario took hold, it would appear that Omar having a sister as a main character was no longer relevant. Thus Chucky and Omar were fused together into the arrogant version of Omar that we get in the final version of Rock and Rule. Once the direction was set to move away from the kid-friendly production of Drats in favor of the more psychedelic story of Rock and Rule, the characters were finalized and the music took over. And ultimately, we had a very innovative and imaginative feature film that went on to tank disastrously at the box office, thanks to very poor marketing decisions. Shortly after that, the original print of the film was destroyed in a fire. It should be noted that the losses incurred by the film's lackluster reception almost put Nelvana out of business. But from these ashes of failure rose a phoenix with a cult status like nothing we've ever seen before. And to this day, fans of all ages, gather in droves to celebrate this flawed, yet unique masterpiece.